Have you ever felt like the money in your wallet has a special superpower? Not the ability to multiply, but the ability to disappear. You get paid in the morning. You pay the bills in the afternoon. And by evening, you're looking at your bank account the way you'd look at a friend who just moved away and forgot to leave their new address. Where did the money go? It hasn't really disappeared. It's just participating in a race that you didn't even know you had signed up for. In that race, prices are sprinting, while our salaries are usually still warming up. And the funny thing is that we tend to react in exactly the same way. Work more overtime. Take on extra jobs. Try to earn more money, like someone trying to bail water out of a boat with a plastic spoon. Very hardworking, but not very effective. Because there is a paradox that very few people realize. Time is an ally of prices, but an enemy of cash. The more years that pass, the more expensive everything becomes. But there is another force in the world that loves time just as much as inflation does. But instead of working against you, it works for you. Its name is compound interest. If inflation is a thief working the night shift, then compound interest is an employee who works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never asks for vacation, and never demands a raise. The only problem is, most people fire this employee before he has a chance to accomplish anything. Because in the first few months, the results are almost nothing worth showing off. Everything grows so slowly that it makes you doubt. But that is exactly what creates the magic. And in this video, we will explore why an amount of money so small that many people would spend it on a single fast food meal can become a powerful wealth-generating machine if you give it enough time. Part 1. The Trap. Most of us have never noticed. There is a question I want you to answer honestly. If tomorrow your boss called you into the office and said, "I'm going to pay you twice your salary," would you be happy? Of course you would. There are only two reasons why someone would not be happy about having their salary doubled. 1, they are not fully awake yet. 2, they are dreaming. But now imagine your boss continues. However, in exchange, you will work 20 hours a day. Suddenly, the conversation becomes a lot less appealing. Because deep down, we all understand one thing. Money can be earned again. Time cannot. The problem is that most of us are still living by a very old formula. Want to earn more money? Work more. Want a higher income? Work overtime. Want your bank account to grow? Sacrifice more time. That formula is not wrong, but it has an invisible limit. You are the limit. A barber can take a few more clients. A driver can make a few more trips. An office worker can take on a few more projects. But eventually, they all run into the same wall. A day only has 24 hours. Nobody gets an upgrade. Nobody receives a 25th hour version of the day. The funny thing is that many people spend their entire lives climbing a ladder without ever asking what it is leaning against. They wake up earlier, work harder, sacrifice more, become more exhausted, but they never stop to ask, am I building an income-generating machine? Or am I the machine? Those are two completely different things. If you own a bakery, that is one thing. If you are the person who has to bake every loaf by hand every morning, that is another. If you own a taxi, that is one thing. If you are the person who has to sit behind the wheel for 12 hours a day, that is another. Many people think they are building wealth, but in reality, they are simply selling each hour of their life at a higher price. That may sound a little harsh, but think about it. If you stopped working for 6 months, what would happen to your income? That is the simplest question for distinguishing active income from assets. Because active income is like a bicycle, it works very well. But only if you keep pedaling. The moment you stop, it begins to slow down. Then it stops. Then it falls over. Many people spend 30 years trying to pedal faster, instead of spending some of that time building an engine. That is why there are people who do not work more than you, are not smarter than you, are not more hardworking than you. Yet their wealth grows faster. They have moved from selling time to owning things that can create value even while they are sleeping. Do not misunderstand. Hard work is always admirable. There is nothing wrong with earning money through effort. The mistake is believing that effort is the only path. Because if your income depends entirely on you being somewhere at 8 o'clock every morning, then you do not truly own your time. You are simply renting it out day by day. And this is where the story begins to change. Because there is a strange mechanism in the financial world. A mechanism that allows very small amounts of money to begin working for you. At first, so slowly that it is almost impossible to notice. But over time, it accelerates in a way that amazes most people. And that is what we will explore in the next section. Part 2. The strange thing the brain doesn't like. There is a reason why so many people quit too early. Because the human brain loves speed. We like immediate results. Go to the gym today. Want muscles tomorrow. Start a diet today. Want to lose weight by the weekend. Invest today. Want to see the account grow significantly next month. But life rarely works that way. The first dollars you invest almost make no difference at all. Sometimes they even make you wonder whether you are wasting your time. But every small investment is like hiring another worker to join the team. At first, there is only one person working. Then 2. Then 4. Then 8. And eventually there comes a point when more workers are working for you than the number of hours you could personally work in an entire lifetime. That is when the game changes, and it is also when patience finally begins to get rewarded. Part 3. What makes the rich get richer is not the amount of money. There is something I wish someone had explained to me earlier. Rich people do not win because they start with enormous amounts of money. They win because they understand one very simple rule. Wealth is not built by how much you invest in a single week. It is built by how many years you continue investing. That may sound like one of those motivational quotes you see online. But look at what actually happens. Imagine there are 2 people. The first person invests $1,000 once and never invests again. The second person invests only $35 every week. At first glance, the first person appears more serious. They take bigger action, stronger action, more impressive action. But investing does not award medals to people who make the biggest impression in the first month. It rewards the people who are still there after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. That is the point where most people get it completely wrong. They focus on the amount of money, while the thing that truly creates the difference is time. A $1,000 investment can grow, but a system that continuously adds new money every week grows in a completely different way. Every week, you buy a little more of an asset. Every month, you own a little more. Every year, you add more fuel to the machine. Then something strange begins to happen. At some point, the growth of the portfolio starts becoming larger than the amount you contribute. That is the moment many people first understand the power of investing. At first, you work for money. Then, money begins working alongside you. Eventually, money does most of the work. Think about that for a moment. If you invest $35 per week, you are contributing about $1,800 per year. Nobody looks at that number and thinks about wealth. But here is the interesting part. If an investment portfolio can grow at an average rate of about 8 to 10% per year over a long period of time, then the thing that determines the final outcome is no longer your contribution. It is the speed at which money begins creating more money. That is why many people are surprised when they look at long-term projections. After 2 or 3 decades, most of the portfolio's value does not come from the money they put in. It comes from accumulated growth. In other words, you might contribute $50,000 over many years. But the portfolio could eventually be worth several $100,000 or even close to $1 million. That enormous gap was not created by hard work. It was created by time. That is why rich people tend to look at time differently from everyone else. They do not simply ask, "How can I make more money?" They ask, "How can I make this money continue growing over the next 10, 20, or 30 years?" That is an entirely different way of thinking. And once you begin thinking that way, you realize that the goal is not to find the perfect investment. The goal is to own assets that are good enough to hold for a very long time. Because in investing, the magic does not happen in a few months. The magic happens when you give time enough opportunity to do its work. Part 4. The secret is not picking the right stock. This is where many people begin to make a mistake. After understanding the power of compound interest, they immediately rush off to find the magic stock. Which stock will increase tenfold? Which company will create the next millionaire? Which fund will beat the market? It sounds reasonable. But history shows that most people who try to predict the winners usually end up doing one thing: predicting incorrectly. The market is like the weather. You can forecast it, you can analyze it, you can hope, but no one can control it. That is why many successful investors do not spend all day searching for the perfect diamond. They focus on something much simpler: owning many good businesses at the same time. Imagine that you had to predict which restaurant would become the most successful in the city. That is quite difficult. But if you own a piece of hundreds of restaurants, stores, technology companies, pharmaceutical firms, banks, and other businesses of all sizes, the game changes completely. You do not need to know who the winners will be. You simply need to own a piece of the winners when they appear. That is exactly why index funds have become so popular. They do not try to be geniuses. They simply try to own as many good businesses as possible at the lowest cost they can. It sounds boring. But great wealth is often created by boring things, not exciting things. And here is the most interesting part. When you invest consistently in diversified assets like these, something strange begins to happen. There are years when the market rises sharply, you benefit. There are years when the market declines. You keep buying. There are years when the news causes everyone to panic. You keep buying. Instead of trying to predict the perfect moment, you turn consistency into an advantage. That may sound too simple. But look at what happens over many years. A person who invests a few dozen dollars each week may feel like they are getting nowhere during the first year. Even the second year may not seem impressive. But by the 10th year, they begin to see a difference. By the 20th year, growth often starts to exceed the total amount they have contributed. And by the 30th year, many people discover an astonishing truth. Most of the wealth they own does not come from the money they saved. It comes from the money their investments created on their own. That is the moment when money starts working harder than its owner. And that is also why many people become wealthy not because of one brilliant decision, but because of thousands of small decisions repeated over many years. A little each week, a little each month, a little each year. Not glamorous, not shocking, not the kind of thing that creates sensational headlines. But in the end, it creates the one thing most people truly want: freedom. Because the ultimate goal of investing is not to have an enormous number in your account. The goal is to build a day when you no longer have to worry so much about trading each hour of your life for money. And everything begins with something so simple that many people overlook it. Start. Then continue. Then continue for a very long time. And perhaps this is the most interesting part of the entire story. After thousands of numbers, after all the charts, after all the calculations involving compound interest, dividends, and growth, we realize that this story was never really about money. It was about time. Money can be lost and earned again. An investment can decline and then recover. An opportunity can pass and then appear again. But time is different. Every day that passes is a day gone forever. There is no undo button. There is no upgraded version. There is no opportunity to buy more. That is why financially successful people often see things very differently. They do not simply ask, "How can I make more money?" They ask, "How can I make my future less dependent on having to sell my time every day?" That is a completely different question, and it leads to a completely different life. Think about this. If someone has $1 million but worries about money every day, are they truly rich? If someone has less money but has the freedom to choose how they live, how they work, and how they use their time, who is truly more free? In the end, investing is not a race to become the richest person in the room. It is the process of creating more choices for yourself. The choice to rest when needed. The choice to refuse work you hate. The choice to spend time with your family. The choice to slow down without panicking about next month's bills. That is what money can truly buy. Not a nicer car. Not a more expensive watch. Not photographs that make other people jealous. But peace of mind. And what always surprises me is that the journey toward that freedom rarely begins with grand decisions. It begins with things so small that many people overlook them. A savings contribution, a recurring investment, a habit maintained for one more month, then one more year, then one more decade. Those small actions do not change your life in a single day. But they can completely transform your life over a long enough period of time. There is a wonderful saying: people often overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year, but underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. And perhaps the same is true of money. We often become disappointed when we do not see immediate results, while the real magic is quietly happening beneath the surface.